Currently, I live with my parents, which might suggest that securing an affordable living situation would be easier for someone else. This thought came to me strongly when I realized that my husband, whom I once thought would be my source of happiness, was taking advantage of me. His betrayal didn't end with him, his parents were equally complicit, and I was shocked by their obliviousness. I started to wonder who would take care of the finances if they decided to push me out of the picture. It became clear to me that trying to maintain any ties with them was pointless. This understanding prompted me to take swift action, reaching out to the right people to begin making arrangements. I arranged for a service to collect all the household appliances, and the next day, I scheduled another pickup for the furniture. The speed of my actions sent my husband, Dennis, into a panic, and he desperately called out for me. My name is Cheryl Jean. I'm 33 years old, and I've been working remotely since graduating from college. I only need to go into the office once a month, thanks to the flexibility of my job. This arrangement is especially important to me because I use a wheelchair after a motorcycle accident during my college years. A car hit me from behind, throwing me into the air. Although I didn't suffer life-threatening injuries, the accident left me with permanent damage to my legs. Despite ongoing therapy, it's unlikely my condition will improve anytime soon. At first, I thought my disability would mean a life alone, but the desire for companionship and marriage eventually resurfaced. A blind date set up by friends led me to Dennis, who was 3 years older than me. His youthful appearance disguised his age, but what truly caught me off guard was his genuine curiosity about my disability. Unlike others, he didn't shy away from asking direct questions about how I managed everyday tasks. I found his openness refreshing. His interest in me led to us dating, and after 8 months, he proposed. I was overjoyed. But after we married, everything changed. We moved into a rental house that had been perfect for my needs, chosen specifically for its wheelchair accessibility. Even though it came with a higher rent, the space was ideal for someone with my condition. Dennis seemed to appreciate these features, but when it came to sharing the workload at home, his support was minimal. Simple requests for help were often met with excuses, revealing a growing imbalance in our relationship. This is the story of how I navigated personal and relational challenges, marked by moments of realization and decisive action in the face of adversity and betrayal. Living with my disability, I've developed a routine that gives me a measure of independence, though some tasks still take longer. When I lived alone, I had a caregiver come twice a week, mostly for help with bathing, while I managed the rest of the time on my own. I often wished Dennis would help me to make things easier, but after we moved in together, he insisted that the caregiver was an unnecessary expense, arguing I could handle things alone. Trying to adjust to this new arrangement proved difficult. The bathroom, designed for accessibility, became an obstacle after Dennis used it. He would leave the bath bucket out and shampoo bottles scattered on the floor, making my already challenging tasks even harder. Despite asking him to be more considerate, Dennis remained indifferent. He claimed the house's design was enough to meet my needs. His lack of empathy was heartbreaking, especially since the house had been chosen for its accessibility. Dennis's initial enthusiasm for our home and the furniture and electronics I'd invested in soon revealed his true motives. His complaints about the accessibility modifications, like the handrails, showed how little he valued the changes made for my benefit. It became clear that Dennis had married me not out of love, but for the advantages my home offered and because I could manage household tasks despite my disability. This realization deepened when I reflected on his behavior since we started dating. He was jobless, frequently out partying, and increasingly dependent on me financially. When I reached out to Dennis's mother, hoping for some understanding and support, I was met with disappointment. She always sided with him, attributing his behavior to the indulgence of being an only child and needing a break. Her responses only deepened my isolation, especially since my parents were no longer around. Turning to my friends for solace didn't help either. They often downplayed my struggles, making it seem as though they envied my problems without grasping the full extent of what I was enduring. Dennis's reaction to me seeking his mother's advice was equally telling. It only underscored his irresponsibility and refusal to address the issues in our marriage. This left me questioning the foundation of our relationship, realizing that the love we once shared had been overshadowed by neglect and exploitation. Though there had to have been love at some point for us to marry, the truth of being used and ignored was a painful pill to swallow. Whenever Dennis was upset, he would disappear for hours, only to return in the early morning, drunk and loud. "I'm home, love," he would slur, completely unaware of the peace around us. "Quiet down, Dennis, you'll wake the neighbors," I'd whisper, but he'd slur back, "Rucky, don't tell me what to do." In his drunken stupor, reasoning with him was impossible. His outbursts became my silent burden, and my patience began to wear thin. Yet, the fear of loneliness made the thought of leaving feel just as unbearable as staying. Things took a sharp turn when Dennis proposed that his parents move in with us. "They're coming to live here," he declared, as though it was a done deal. I was stunned. While I understood the desire to be near aging parents, His were perfectly healthy and had their own home. Why would they need to move in with us? But Dennis dismissed my concerns, accusing me of being selfish and failing to see that 4 adults in a house meant for 2 was impractical, especially considering my need for a quiet space to work and the extra time I required to complete basic tasks due to my disability. Despite my objections, Dennis acted quickly. By the weekend, his parents were visiting, and discussions about their permanent move were already in motion, without me being consulted. Then came the bombshell. Dennis suggested I move into a care facility to make room for them. "It's for the best," he said. "They'll take care of everything there." The absurdity of it all hit me hard. Not only did he want his parents to move in, but now he was ready to send me away to a care facility, with occasional visits thrown in. My heart sank. Was I nothing more than an inconvenience to be discarded? The shock didn't stop there. Dennis, devoid of any warmth or affection, coldly asked, "When did I ever say I loved you, Cheryl?" His words cut deep, revealing the true extent of his manipulation and lack of genuine care for me. It was a bitter truth to face, knowing I had allowed things to spiral this far. But what he said next was even more incomprehensible. He told me that he planned to live in the house with his parents, relegating me to the status of an outsider. His parents, far from offering any support, seemed to take pleasure in the situation, adding insult to injury. In that moment, I realized that they had likely been eyeing my home long before Dennis and I even married. The rapid escalation of everything left me reeling. I knew I had to act. "Please leave," I said, my voice trembling as I demanded they leave my life and my home. Dennis's angry response, choosing his parents over our marriage, solidified my resolve. It was clear that I had to reclaim my space, my dignity, and my future, no matter how daunting the idea of starting over seemed. The truth of Dennis's behavior hit me hard as I saw him fully for what he was, a man who would prioritize his parents' desires over his own wife's well-being. Why couldn't he support them financially or help them find their own place? Instead, he seemed intent on claiming my home. My frustration boiled over, and my mind felt consumed with rage. Dennis's mother tried to downplay the situation, claiming their visit was simply to inspect the house, as if their decision to move in had already been made. Their casual comments about the house's amenities and their blatant sense of entitlement left me fuming. As I fought to keep my composure, a troubling thought struck me. How did they expect to manage without me? With Dennis working only part-time and his parents on pensions, I was the one carrying the financial load, covering the $3,500 monthly rent, among other expenses. Were they under the illusion that Dennis was the provider? When Dennis left, his parting words, asserting his authority as the man of the house, left me stunned, further highlighting the depth of his disregard for me and our marriage. I quickly shifted into action mode, contacting a real estate agent to begin the process of extricating myself from this untenable situation. Dennis's absence that night, likely spent celebrating with his parents, gave me the space and clarity to sort through my belongings, separating what was necessary from what wasn't. By the time he returned, he was met with the surprise of my decisiveness and the revelation that I intended to divorce him. His disbelief was a stark awakening to the assumptions he had about our relationship and my dependence on him. He had grossly underestimated my strength and independence, assuming I would cling to an unhappy marriage simply out of fear of being alone because of my disability. As the conversation unfolded, Dennis's reaction shifted from shock to desperation, unable to fathom why I would choose a life of independence over the one he had envisioned for us. His panic was palpable, a sharp contrast to the self-assured man I had once known. This confrontation marked a profound shift in my self-perception. I was no longer the passive partner who would tolerate his neglect and disrespect. Announcing my plans to leave and divorce, I saw Dennis's attitude change from arrogance to anxiety. His attempt to delay my departure under the guise of concern was a last-ditch effort to regain control, but my resolve was unshakable, and I had already secured a new place to live. This moment was empowering, an undeniable turning point where I reclaimed my autonomy and began to shed the weight of a marriage that had drained me for far too long. Dennis scrambled to adjust to the new reality, but his true character was now fully exposed. He had thought he could continue exploiting my vulnerability, but my newfound assertiveness marked the beginning of my journey to reclaim my independence and dignity. His behavior grew increasingly frustrating, but I remained steadfast, my plans for independence already firmly in place. Long before our marriage, I had been thinking about my future. During my recovery in the hospital, I'd begun studying investment literature and decided to diversify my portfolio. I used a combination of my earnings and an inheritance from my parents, which Dennis didn't know about, to purchase a condominium facility. I had been leasing it out for some time without ever revealing this asset to him. It was my secret safety net, an insurance policy for when I decided to take control of my life. Dennis's plea for me to reconsider, suggesting that we could live with his parents, only demonstrated his inability to comprehend the situation. The thought of remaining in such a stifling arrangement was beyond me. His accusations of selfishness when faced with my resolve to leave were hypocritical, given how self-centered he had been throughout our marriage. After my refusal, he fell silent, clearly struggling to process the reality that our relationship was over. When he finally agreed to the divorce, it seemed more like resignation than understanding, perhaps hoping that life with his parents would relieve him of any responsibility. His return to his parents to plan his next steps, urging me to expedite my departure, confirmed his detachment from the reality of our crumbling marriage. My move was swift and final, completed within a week, during which Dennis was conspicuously absent. The next time we saw each other, I was settling into my new home. Dennis was visibly confused when he saw how bare our former home had become, his agitation growing as he discovered that I had arranged for the removal of the furniture and appliances, everything I had brought into the marriage. The only items left behind were 3 cardboard boxes, including a clothing container we had bought together. His protests, echoed by his parents, about the necessity of dividing assets were met with the harsh reality of the home's rental status and its high cost, details I had shared with him at the start of our marriage. The revelation that the rent was $3,000, with the potential for an increase due to the specialized accessibility features, left them stunned. This misunderstanding about the nature of the property we lived in highlighted the broader miscommunications and financial disconnects that had plagued our marriage. After our separation, interest in the property quickly surged from individuals seeking homes that could accommodate specific needs, which prompted me to advise Dennis and his parents to find a new place to live. Their shock and dismay at being informed so late revealed their lack of preparation for the fallout from our split. Despite Dennis's threat of legal action, his financial situation made such a move unfeasible. When confronted with evidence of his reckless behavior, photos I had discreetly taken, his position became untenable. His parents, taken aback by these revelations, along with Dennis's desperate pleas for reconciliation, only underscored the desperation of their circumstances. The situation took a dramatic turn when Dennis revealed that his family was facing imminent homelessness due to the foreclosure of their property, a consequence of his father's mounting debts. This revelation exposed the truth behind Dennis's earlier motivations for marriage, not love or mutual respect, but a desire for financial stability. His approach to our relationship had always been transactional, seeking to benefit from my resources rather than build a genuine partnership. Despite his pleas and his family's attempts to sway me, my decision remained unchanged. The divorce had severed any obligation I felt toward them, and I had no intention of assisting them further. Dennis's efforts to reclaim the furniture and electronics, claiming they were necessary, were transparent and futile. My refusal to give in was final, a stand for independence and self-reliance. Evicting them from the property was a straightforward process, thanks to the lease being in my name. This final step marked a clear end to our entanglement. As they faced the harsh reality of finding new accommodation, Dennis's parting words dripped with bitterness and resentment. But the freedom I felt, living on my own terms, free from the weight of a failed marriage and their dependency, was invaluable. The closure I found allowed me to move forward, liberated from their deceit and demands. After cutting ties with Dennis and his parents, I turned a new page in my life by moving into a luxury assisted living facility, one I had purchased with my savings and investments. Contrary to Dennis's derisive assumptions about the place being substandard, the facility was a sanctuary of luxury, valued at $3 million. It offered a perfect balance of independence and support, with medical professionals and assistants on hand when needed. The apartment-style living space was designed for comfort and privacy, featuring 3 bedrooms, plenty of room for families or couples, if they so wished. When Dennis unexpectedly showed up at the facility, his disbelief was palpable. He could hardly comprehend the life I had built for myself, far removed from the crappy existence he had mocked before. Despite our divorce and his evident desperation, now living in a motel, struggling to find work due to the lack of a stable address, he audaciously begged for reconciliation. His plea to share in my success was both shameless and revealing, demonstrating how little he had changed. He had abandoned his own parents in pursuit of personal comfort, and now sought to exploit me once again. I was prepared for this encounter. The support of the facility's residents, many of whom had witnessed our marriage's dissolution, played a key role in showing Dennis the reality of his situation. Their curiosity and sympathy only underscored the absurdity of his actions. Dennis's embarrassment was evident as he realized how far removed his own life had become from the stability I had created. Under the watchful eyes of the community, he quickly retreated, likely realizing that any further pursuit would only deepen his shame. That moment reaffirmed my decision to sever ties with him once and for all, embracing the new life I had built. Meanwhile, I ran into Dennis's parents working modest jobs, their situation a stark contrast to mine. But rather than dwell on their struggles, I focused on the vibrant community I had found within the facility. I hosted gatherings, forged friendships with others who shared similar mobility challenges, and embraced a sense of belonging I had never experienced before. The environment not only supported my personal growth but also motivated me to attend physical therapy sessions to improve my mobility. My life, now free from the turmoil of the past, stands as a testament to independence, resilience, and the pursuit of happiness. The shadows of my past with Dennis are far behind me, and I am finally living a life that is truly mine.